The security alert chimed on my phone as I sat in my office, finishing a client presentation. A simple notification that would shatter the foundation of my marriage. Live motion detected at our lakeside cabin. I swiped to view the camera feed, expecting to see Cole arriving early for our anniversary weekend. Instead, I froze, my coffee cup suspended mid-air, as I watched my husband of 8 years lead another woman through our front door. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. His hand rested on the small of her back, intimate and familiar in a way that made my stomach turn to ice. I watched, unable to look away, as he gave her the tour I'd once received, pointing out the exposed beams I'd insisted on preserving during our renovation, the antique fishing equipment his grandfather had left him, the view of the lake that had sold us on the property in the first place. Only now, he presented these treasures to a stranger, a tall blonde woman who moved through our space as though she belonged there. When he pulled her close for a kiss in front of the stone fireplace where we'd spent countless winter evenings, something inside me went perfectly, terrifyingly still. The cabin had been our sanctuary, the place we escaped to when the world pressed in too close. We'd purchased it 5 years ago, a rundown property that we'd lovingly restored together, weekend by weekend. We'd talked about retiring there someday, watching sunsets from the deck, growing old in rocking chairs overlooking the water. Now, he was sharing it with someone else, contaminating every memory with her presence. I sat motionless, watching them move through the rooms, his hand never leaving her body. They disappeared into our bedroom, and I finally set down my coffee cup with trembling fingers. I closed the security app, unable to witness any more. The silence in my office pressed against my eardrums as I tried to process what I'd just seen. 3 days from now, we were supposed to celebrate our anniversary at that cabin. I had already arranged for time off, packed a bag with new lingerie, purchased his favorite whiskey. I'd been worried about us lately. The growing distance, his late nights at work, the way he barely looked at me over dinner. This weekend was supposed to reconnect us, to bridge whatever gap had formed when I wasn't paying attention. Now I understood the distance. It had a name, a face, a body that my husband seemed to know as intimately as he once knew mine. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the blank screen of my phone. Minutes, perhaps. Or hours. Time seemed to bend and warp around me. Eventually, my administrative assistant, Lucy, knocked on my door, concerned I'd missed my next meeting. I waved her off with some excuse about a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. In some detached part of my brain, I noticed how calm I sounded, how steady my hands were as I gathered my things. Shock, probably. The numbness that precedes pain. I'd experienced it once before, when I broke my arm falling from a horse as a teenager. That strange, floating moment before the nerve endings catch up with the injury. I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing ahead to calculate what I needed to do. The cabin was a 3-hour drive north, nestled in a secluded cove on Lake Serenity. Cole had told me he'd be in Atlanta until Saturday for a business conference. Another lie in what I was beginning to suspect was a tapestry of deceptions. Our home, our primary residence in the suburbs, felt suddenly foreign when I walked through the door. How many other lies filled these rooms? How long had he been seeing her? Was this a one-time indiscretion or something more enduring? The questions multiplied, breeding in the corners of my mind like shadows at dusk. I moved through the house with purpose, ignoring the framed wedding photos that now seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. In our home office, I booted up my laptop and accessed our shared accounts. The cabin security system was state-of-the-art, Cole's insistence, given the property's remote location. It allowed remote monitoring, control of entry points, and most importantly right now, the ability to change access codes. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What I was contemplating wasn't a small thing. It wasn't an impulsive reaction. It was a declaration of war. But as I recalled the confidence with which Cole had guided that woman through our special place, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about his betrayal. It was about his audacity, his disrespect, his assumption that I would remain ignorant while he desecrated what we'd built together. I changed the door codes first, then the alarm system passwords. I revoked his digital key access and authorized a complete security protocol update. The system asked if I wanted to push notification of these changes to all registered users. I clicked no. Let him discover it when he tried to leave. Next, I called Anton, the local property manager who looked after the cabin when we weren't there. Anton had become a friend over the years, helping us navigate permits for the renovation, recommending local contractors, occasionally bringing us fresh fish from his morning catches. "Dina, how are you?" His familiar voice carried the lilt of his Russian heritage despite decades in America. "I've been better, Anton." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, controlled. "I need a favor, and I need your discretion." There was a pause. "Of course, anything." "Cole is at the cabin with someone he shouldn't be. I've changed the security codes, but I need you to change the physical locks as soon as possible. Today." Another pause, longer this time. Anton was nothing if not perceptive. "I understand. I can be there in 2 hours with my toolkit. Do you want me to confront—" "No." I cut him off. "Just change the locks. If they're still there, simply say it's scheduled maintenance I arranged weeks ago. Don't engage beyond that. And if they leave before I arrive, then change them anyway. And Anton? I'd appreciate if you could keep an eye on the property over the next few days. Let me know when they leave." "Consider it done," he said without hesitation. "I'm sorry, Dina." I thanked him and hung up, feeling the first crack in my composure. Anton's simple expression of sympathy threatened to unravel the tight control I'd maintained since watching that security footage. I pushed the feeling down. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. I had one more call to make. Cameron, my sister, answered on the third ring. "Hey, stranger. I was just thinking about you. How's the anniversary planning going?" The casual question nearly undid me. I took a breath, steadying myself against the desk. "Cam, I need you to come over. Now if you can." My sister had never needed more explanation than that. 20 minutes later, her car pulled into my driveway. One look at my face as I opened the door, and she simply opened her arms. That's when the numbness finally gave way, and the pain came crashing through. 3 years before my world imploded on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Cole and I were considered the power couple among our friends. I ran a successful interior design firm that specialized in commercial spaces, while Cole had climbed to senior partner at his investment banking firm. We lived in a renovated Craftsman in an upscale neighborhood, hosted dinner parties that our friends talked about for weeks, and seemed to have mastered the elusive work-life balance that everyone chased. When we found the cabin, it was during a weekend drive we took to clear our heads after a particularly intense period at work. We weren't even looking for property, just enjoying the scenery, stopping at roadside farm stands, trying to remember what it felt like to exist without deadlines and client expectations. "Let's take this road," Cole had suggested, pointing to a narrow turnoff that wound toward the lake. "I want to see the water." The for sale sign was weather-beaten and leaning, like it had been there so long it had given up hope. The cabin behind it was in even worse shape: peeling paint, a sagging porch, windows clouded with decades of grime. But the location was breathtaking. Perched on a small bluff overlooking a pristine cove, with ancient oaks framing the view of mountains beyond the water. "It's a teardown," the realtor had warned when we called the number on the sign. The previous owners abandoned it years ago. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The land's the only thing of value. Cole and I saw something different. We walked through rooms thick with dust and memories, imagining what could be. A family had lived here once, raised children, celebrated holidays, weathered storms both literal and figurative. The bones of the place were solid, despite the cosmetic neglect. We could bring it back, I whispered, standing in what would become our bedroom, looking out over the lake. Cole squeezed my hand. We could make it ours. We made an offer that day, significantly under asking price given the condition. When it was accepted, we spent the next 18 months driving up on weekends, slowly transforming the neglected property into our retreat. I designed, Cole executed. We argued over paint colors and hardware finishes, and whether the kitchen island should be stationary or on wheels. We compromised. We created. The cabin became our escape, our refuge from demanding careers and social obligations. We had rules. No work calls, no checking emails after 7 p.m., no discussing clients or office. Politics? Just us, reconnecting with each other and with the simpler pleasures, cooking elaborate meals in our renovated kitchen, reading books by the fire, skinny dipping in the lake on moonlit nights when we felt particularly daring. This place makes me remember who I am outside of the office, Cole once said, nursing a bourbon on the deck as the sun set. Who we are. I thought I knew who we were. I thought we were partners, equals, a team navigating life together. I thought we were honest with each other. Cameron set a mug of tea in front of me, pulling me back to the present. My sister had listened without interruption as I recounted finding Cole with another woman, changing the security codes, calling Anton. Now she sat across from me at my kitchen island, her face a study in controlled fury. "How are you so calm?" she asked finally. "If it were me, I'd be halfway to the cabin with a baseball bat." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "I'm not calm. I'm processing." "Processing what? That your husband is a cheating asshole?" Flinched at her bluntness. "Processing what I'm going to do about it." Cameron's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not going to confront him in some dramatic scene at the cabin. That's what he'd expect. Tears, accusations, a chance to explain himself, to minimize what he's done, to make me feel crazy for being upset. How could he possibly minimize this? He brought another woman to your anniversary spot." I took a sip of tea, organizing my thoughts. Our whole marriage, Cole has controlled the narrative. He's the charming one, the successful one, the one everyone gravitates toward at parties. I've always been the pragmatic one, the planner, the one who makes sure the bills are paid and the social calendar is managed. That's called being an adult, Dina. I know. But it's also meant that in any disagreement, I'm cast as the uptight one, the unreasonable one. Cole's really good at making you question your own perceptions. If I confront him while he's with her, he'll spin it, say it's not what it looks like or that I'm overreacting, or that we've been having problems for a long time and I've been too busy to notice. Cameron's expression darkened. Has he done that before? Made you question yourself? I hesitated. Memories surfacing that I'd pushed down for years. The time Cole had missed my father's retirement dinner because of a work emergency that later seemed suspiciously vague. His explanation had been so persuasive, so reasonable, that I'd ended up apologizing for being upset. Or the mysterious charges on our credit card that he'd dismissed as a company expense mistakenly put on our personal account. An explanation I'd accepted without verification. "Not explicitly," I said finally. "But he's very convincing when he wants to be. It's what makes him good at his job. And what makes him dangerous to your self-esteem," Cameron added quietly. My phone chimed. A text from Anton. Arrived at cabin. Their car's still here. Beginning lock change on exterior doors as discussed. I showed Cameron the message. "Anton, we'll text when it's done. Then we wait." "For what?" For Cole to discover he's locked out. For him to call me, demanding an explanation. And that's when I'll have the upper hand for once. Cameron studied me, concern replacing anger in her eyes. This isn't like you, Dina. The calm calculation, the strategic thinking. I met her gaze steadily. Maybe it's exactly like me. Maybe this is who I've always been when I'm not letting Cole define who I am. My phone chimed again. Anton. Locks changed. Told them it was scheduled maintenance. Man seemed annoyed but didn't question. We'll monitor and update you. The first stage was complete. Now I had to prepare for what came next. The first call came exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes after Anton changed the locks. I watched Cole's name flash across my phone screen, feeling a strange sense of detachment, as if I were observing someone else's marital crisis unfold. I let it ring through to voicemail, then again 5 minutes later. And again, 3 minutes after that. When I finally picked up on his fourth attempt, my voice was steady. Hello, Cole. Dina, what the hell is going on? His voice carried that familiar tone, part confusion, part irritation, that he used whenever something didn't go according to his plans. Someone changed the locks at the cabin. The security codes aren't working either. Yes, I replied simply. I did that. The silence that followed stretched so long I might have thought we'd been disconnected if not for the sound of his breathing, suddenly heavier. Why would you do that? His voice had shifted, softened, became cautious. I think you know. Why? I kept my responses short, denying him the opportunity to seize control of the conversation. Another pause. I heard muffled sounds, as if he'd covered the phone to speak to someone else. My stomach clenched, imagining him explaining the situation to the blonde woman, perhaps gesturing in frustration while mouthing that his wife was being difficult. Listen, Dina, I don't know what you think is happening, but you're jumping to conclusions. His voice was back, smoother now, the tone he used to diffuse tense client situations. I'm at a work retreat. Marshall brought the team up here for strategy sessions. I almost laughed at the absurdity of his lie. Is that so? And does your strategy include taking your colleague to our bedroom? His sharp intake of breath told me everything. The cabin has security cameras, Cole. I saw you arrive. I saw who you arrived with. I saw everything. Dina, his voice took on a pleading edge. It's not what it looks like. The cliché almost made me laugh. It looks exactly like what it is. You, bringing another woman to our cabin, to our bed, while telling me you were at a conference in Atlanta. I can explain. I'm sure you can. I cut him off. You're very good at explanations, but I'm not interested in hearing them. As I spoke, I opened my laptop and pulled up the file I'd been compiling all afternoon. After Cameron left to pick up dinner, I'd gone through our financial records with methodical precision, looking for patterns I'd missed. And I'd found them. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, weekend work trips that coincided with suspicious credit card activity, a secret bank account I'd discovered linked to our joint finances. What happens now? Cole asked, his voice careful, calculating. He was assessing the damage, trying to figure out the path of least resistance. Now you can enjoy your weekend with your girlfriend, I said calmly. But you'll need to find new accommodations. Your access to the cabin has been permanently revoked. You can't just— Actually, I can. The cabin is in my name, Cole. If you check the property records, which I'm guessing you never bothered to do, you'll find that while both our names are on the mortgage, the deed lists me as the sole owner. It had been Cole's idea, ironically. Something about tax advantages given my business structure, a detail he had apparently forgotten. Another muffled conversation on his end. I pictured him pacing, running his hand through his hair the way he did when stressful situations slipped beyond his control. This is ridiculous, he finally said, anger bleeding through his composed facade. Where am I supposed to go? We're 3 hours from home. That sounds like a problem you created for yourself, I replied. I suggest you start with the Lakeview Inn about 20 minutes south of the cabin. They usually have vacancies this time of year. I heard him exhale sharply. And our anniversary weekend? We're supposed to be there together in 3 days. The audacity was breathtaking. There is no anniversary weekend, Cole. Not anymore. I ended the call before he could respond, setting my phone down on the kitchen counter with trembling fingers. Only then did I allow myself to acknowledge the warning signs I'd been ignoring for months, perhaps years. The late nights at the office that had become more frequent. The business trips that seemed to multiply on his calendar. The way he'd stopped, asking about my day, stopped sharing details about his. The diminishing intimacy, explained away by stress and schedules. The password on his phone that hadn't existed before, justified as a new company security policy. But there had been earlier signs too. Subtle shifts I'd attributed to the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. Cole checking his phone constantly during our rare dinners together. The mysterious text messages that made him smile in a way he no longer smiled at me. His sudden interest in his appearance. New clothes, a different haircut, an expensive gym. Membership he actually used. Cameron had noticed before I had. 6 months ago, during a girls' night at my house, she'd watched Cole leave for a client dinner dressed in his best suit, freshly shaved, wearing cologne I'd given him for Christmas, but that he rarely used. He's putting in a lot of effort for clients, she'd observed after he left, her voice carefully neutral. I'd dismissed her concern. Image is everything in his industry. First impressions, you know. She hadn't pushed, but the look she gave me contained a warning I hadn't been ready to receive. My phone buzzed with a text from Anton. They're packing up. Looking angry. Should I stay out of sight? I replied quickly. Yes. Let me know when they leave. As I set the phone down, it immediately began ringing again. Cole. I silenced it and watched as a text appeared instead. We need to talk about this like adults. Stop being childish. His attempt to flip the script, to cast me as the unreasonable one, was so predictable it almost made me sad. The man I'd married, the man I thought I knew, was a carefully constructed facade. And now that I could see through it, I wondered how much else of our life together had been an illusion. My phone chimed again with another text from Anton. They've left, heading south on the main road. The first confrontation was over, but I knew Cole well enough to understand this was just the beginning. By evening, Cole's tactics had evolved from demands to diplomacy. His text messages shifted from accusatory, "This is completely unreasonable," to conciliatory, "Let's talk this through," to apologetic, "I made a mistake. We can fix this." I read, each one without responding, watching his desperation grow with each unanswered plea. Cameron returned with takeout and a bottle of wine. "Any word from Anton?" she asked, unpacking containers of Thai food. "They left about an hour ago," I replied, showing her my phone. Heading south, probably to that inn I mentioned. And Cole? Cycling through his playbook of manipulation techniques. I scrolled through his messages for her to see. He'll be calling mutual friends next, trying to spin the story before I can. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Allison, my closest friend besides Cameron. I showed the screen to my sister. "Right on schedule." Cameron raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to answer?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to get my affairs in order first." "Affairs being the operative word?" Cameron muttered, pouring wine into 2 glasses. While we ate, I explained what I'd discovered during my afternoon of financial investigation. The secret bank account had been opened 3 years ago, around the time Cole started traveling more frequently. Credit card statements showed patterns of spending at high-end restaurants and hotels, often in locations just a few hours' drive from our city. There were jewelry purchases I'd never received, spa packages for two, weekend getaways disguised as business trips. This wasn't a one-time thing, I said, pushing my food around my plate. This has been going on for years. Cameron's expression darkened. Do you know who she is? The woman from the cabin? I shook my head. I got a good look at her face on the security footage, but I don't recognize her. She could be someone from his office, a client, someone he met elsewhere entirely. Does it matter? I considered the question. Not really. The betrayal would be the same regardless of who she is. My phone began ringing again. This time, it was Marco, Cole's best friend since college. I declined the call. He's rallying the troops, Cameron observed. Of course he is. Cole hates losing control of any situation. I took a sip of wine. He's trying to get ahead of the story, make sure his version reaches everyone first. Which is why you should be talking to your friends, telling them the truth. I set my glass down. I will. But first, I need to secure more than just the cabin. After dinner, I made 2 calls. The first was to my attorney, Mario, who agreed to meet me first thing in the morning. The second was to my bank, where I requested an immediate freeze on our joint accounts. I had my own accounts for my business, which Cole couldn't access. But most of our household finances flowed through shared accounts. Not anymore. When I finished, I found Cameron sitting on my sofa, scrolling through her phone with a deepening frown. What? I asked, recognizing her expression. She hesitated. Cole's been busy. She turned her phone toward me to show a group text from him to our circle of friends. Worried about Dina. She's not answering calls, texts. If anyone hears from her, please let me know she's okay. We had a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated, my voice flat. That's what he's calling it. Classic misdirection, Cameron said. Makes it sound like you're the one being unreasonable, while positioning himself as the concerned husband. My phone buzzed again. Another friend checking if I was okay. Then another. And another. Cole's strategy was working. He'd successfully framed the narrative as a concerning situation where I was behaving erratically rather than a husband caught in a years-long deception. You need to respond, Cameron urged. Otherwise, he controls the story. She was right. I drafted a simple text and sent it to the friends who had reached out. I'm fine. Taking some space after discovering Cole at our cabin with another woman. Would appreciate privacy right now. Direct. Factual. Unemotional. Within minutes, my phone was flooded with messages of shock, support, and questions. I silenced it, unable to deal with the emotional labor of managing other people's reactions to my crisis. You should stay with me tonight, Cameron suggested. He'll probably come here when he gets back to town. I shook my head. No, this is my house too. I'm not leaving. Dina, I need to be here, I insisted. There are financial documents, legal papers, things I'll need for my meeting with Mario tomorrow. Besides, I'm not hiding from Cole. I'm not the one who did anything wrong. Cameron looked skeptical but didn't argue further. Then I'm staying here with you. I was about to protest when my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Allison, Cole's friend. I think we should talk. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Cole didn't have a friend named Allison. The only Allison in our lives was my friend. What is it? Cameron asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. I think this might be her, the woman from the cabin. Cameron's eyes widened. Are you going to respond? I studied the message, considering my options. This was unexpected, the other woman reaching out directly. Was it a trap set by Cole? Or was she acting independently? Yes, I decided. But not right now. First, I need to find out who she is. I took a photo of the message and sent it to Anton. With a quick text, can you zoom in on the security footage of the woman at the cabin? I need a clearer image of her face. Anton replied almost immediately. We'll send you screenshots within the hour. Meanwhile, my laptop pinged with an email notification from our credit card company. Unusual activity alert. Approve or deny. I logged in to find Cole had just checked into the Lakeview Inn and charged it to our joint credit card. The one I hadn't yet frozen. The room was reserved for 3 nights, our anniversary weekend. He had taken her there instead. Something cold and resolute settled in my chest. Whatever doubts I might have harbored about my course of action vanished in that moment. Cole wasn't just a cheater. He was systematically cruel, bringing his mistress to the places that meant the most to us, deliberately contaminating our memories. I denied the charge, then froze the credit card. Let him explain that to his girlfriend. Anton's email arrived just before midnight, containing several high-resolution screenshots from the cabin's security footage. I sat at the kitchen island, Cameron leaning over my shoulder as I opened the attachments. The woman's face came into sharp focus. Early 30s, striking features, professionally highlighted blonde hair. There was something vaguely familiar about her, but I couldn't place it. "Do you recognize her?" Cameron asked, studying the images. I shook my head. "Not really, but I feel like I should." I downloaded the clearest photo and ran a reverse image search online. Nothing. Then, on a hunch, I navigated to Cole's company website and began scrolling through their team page. "There," Cameron pointed suddenly. "4th row down. The professional?" Headshot showed the same woman, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, wearing a tailored blazer and a confident smile. The caption beneath read, "Allison Reeves, Senior Investment Strategist." "She works with him," I said flatly. "Of course she does." I clicked on her profile and scanned it quickly. She'd joined the firm 2 years ago, coming from a competitor in Chicago. Her credentials were impressive. MBA from Wharton, series of promotions at prestigious firms, specialization in the same sector Cole managed. "Do you think that's how they met?" Cameron asked. "At work?" "Probably. But 2 years." I trailed off, remembering how our relationship had shifted around that time. Cole had become increasingly critical of small things, the way I organized our pantry, how I loaded the dishwasher, my preference for documentaries over action movies. Insignificant complaints that, in retrospect, seemed designed to create distance, to justify his emotional withdrawal. I turned back to my phone and reread the text from Allison's number. "This is Allison, Cole's friend. I think we should talk." After a moment's consideration, I replied, "What could we possibly have to talk about, Ms. Reeves?" Her response came almost immediately. "So you know who I am. I know you work with my husband. Yes. And that you're more than colleagues." There was a longer pause before her next message. "It's not what you think. Cole told me you were separated." A cold laugh escaped me. Cameron looked up sharply. "What?" I showed her the text exchange. The oldest excuse in the book. He told me he was separated. "You don't believe her?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But it doesn't really matter. Whether she knew about me or not doesn't change what Cole did." Typed a response. "We are not separated. Never have been." "If Cole told you that, he lied to you too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Finally. I'd like to meet in person. I have information you should know." I stared at the message, uncertain how to proceed. Was this a trap? A ploy Cole had orchestrated to make me look unreasonable if I refused? Or did Allison genuinely have something to tell me? "Don't do it," Cameron advised, reading over my shoulder. "Nothing good can come from meeting her." But curiosity nagged at me. What if she knows something important? Something that could help me legally? Or what if she's planning to record your conversation? Make you say something Cole could use against you? I considered this possibility. Cole was certainly calculating enough to attempt such a maneuver. But something about Allison's messages felt genuine. The immediacy of her responses, the directness of her approach. Before I could decide how to respond, my phone rang. Cole again. This time I answered. The credit card was declined, he said without preamble, his voice tight with controlled anger. And I can't access our checking account. Yes, I replied simply. You froze our accounts. It wasn't a question. I protected our assets from further misuse, I corrected. Given that you've been spending our joint funds on your girlfriend for what appears to be years. A sharp inhale. Dina, this is getting out of hand. You're acting irrationally. Is that what you're telling everyone? That I've lost my mind? That this is just a misunderstanding? I kept my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. I'm concerned about you, he said, his tone softening into something patronizingly gentle. This isn't like you lashing out like this. Protecting myself isn't lashing out, Cole. It's a rational response to discovering my husband has been living a double life. I made a mistake, he conceded, his voice dropping into the remorseful register he used when trying to diffuse client anger. One I deeply regret, but destroying our life together over one lapse in judgment. One? I cut him off. The separate? Bank account you opened 3 years ago suggests otherwise. The pattern of hotel charges and restaurant bills for two says this has been going on for a very long time. Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its practiced smoothness. You went through our financial records? Of course I did. The moment I saw you with her, I started looking for what else you might be hiding. Another pause. I could almost hear him recalculating, adjusting his strategy. Where am I supposed to stay tonight? He finally asked, a hint of genuine uncertainty in his voice. You've locked me out of both homes and frozen our accounts. That sounds like a problem for you and Allison to solve? I replied coolly. Perhaps one of you has a corporate card you can use. You've spoken to Allison? Sharp, alarmed. Interesting. He hadn't expected that. We've been in touch, I said vaguely, wanting to see how he'd react. Whatever she told you. Good night, Cole, I interrupted, ending the call before he could continue. Cameron was watching me with a mixture of concern and admiration. Look at you, playing psychological chess? I set my phone down, suddenly exhausted. I married a strategist. I've been watching him maneuver people for years. I've learned a few things. My phone buzzed with another text from Allison. Please, coffee tomorrow. Public place of your choosing. This is important. Cameron shook her head. It's a bad idea. Maybe it was. But Cole's reaction to learning I'd spoken with Allison suggested there was something there. Something he didn't want me to know. I replied, Riverside Cafe, 10 a.m. Come alone. Her response was immediate. I'll be there. As I set my phone down, I felt a strange sense of calm descend. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a clear-eyed determination I barely recognized in myself. For years, I had been the accommodating one, the reasonable one, the one who smoothed over conflicts and kept our life running while Cole charmed his way through the world. But that woman was gone. In her place stood someone who saw clearly for the first time. Not just Cole's betrayal, but the subtle ways he had diminished me over the years, making me doubt my perceptions, question my worth, shrink myself to fit the role he had assigned me. What are you thinking? Cameron asked quietly. I looked up at my sister, the one person who had always seen me clearly, even when I couldn't see myself. I'm thinking that losing Cole might be the best thing that ever happened to me. I arrived at Riverside Cafe 20 minutes early, deliberately choosing a table with my back to the wall, facing the entrance. A small voice recorder sat in my purse, Cameron's suggestion, one I initially resisted but ultimately accepted. You don't know what she'll tell you, my sister had insisted. Better to have proof. The morning had been a blur of activity. After a fitful night's sleep, I'd met with Mario, my attorney, who listened without interruption as I detailed Cole's infidelity, the cabin confrontation, and my subsequent financial maneuvers. "You've done well protecting yourself," he said when I finished. "But there's more we need to do." We spent an hour discussing strategy, what documents I needed to gather, what assets needed to be secured, how to document Cole's years of deception. I left with a clear action plan and Mario's promise to begin drafting divorce papers immediately. "Don't make any major decisions yet," he'd cautioned, "but let's be prepared." Now, sipping a cappuccino and watching the cafe door, I felt oddly composed. The devastation of yesterday had crystallized into something harder, more resolute. Where there should have been grief, I found clarity. At precisely 10 a.m., Allison Reeves walked in. In person, without the filter of security cameras, she looked younger, less polished than her professional headshot. She scanned the cafe, spotted me, and approached with visible hesitation. "Dina?" she asked, though she clearly knew who I was. I gestured to the chair across from me without standing. "Ms. Reeves," she sat, placing her handbag carefully on the empty chair beside her. Up close, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight redness around her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice firmer than I expected. "I know this is unconventional." "That's one word for it," I replied. "You said you had information. I'm listening." She ordered a coffee when the server approached, then waited until we were alone again before continuing. "Cole lied to me," she said bluntly. "For over a year, he told me he was separated, that you were living apart and quietly finalizing your divorce." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Found none. "And you believed him?" I had no reason not to. She met my gaze directly. The hours he spent with me, the weekends away, it all seemed consistent with someone who was single or nearly so, except for the wedding ring he still wears. She flinched slightly. "He said it was for appearances at work, that the senior partners were traditional and might overlook him for promotion if they knew he was divorcing." I almost laughed at the absurdity of the lie. "And you never thought to verify any of this? Never looked us up online? Never questioned why he never introduced you to his friends?" "He did introduce me to his friends," she countered. "To Marco, to several colleagues. They all corroborated his story." That stopped me. Marco knew? Cole's closest friend, someone who had been in our wedding, who had dinner at our home monthly, had participated in this deception? "Marco told you Cole and I were separated?" I asked carefully. She nodded. "He said you'd been having problems for years, that it was just a matter of time." A cold weight settled in my stomach. The betrayal expanded beyond Cole, encompassing people. I'd considered friends. How many others knew? How many had covered for him, smiled to my face while knowing what was happening behind my back? "That's not why I asked to meet," Allison continued, interrupting my thoughts. "Last night, after you changed the locks, after the hotel card was declined, Cole was different." "Different how?" "Angry. Calculating." She hesitated. "He made some calls. I only heard parts of the conversations, but he was talking about offshore accounts, about moving assets, names I didn't recognize. And then—" She stopped abruptly. "And then what?" I prompted. "He got a call that seemed to upset him. After that, he told me he had to go back to the city immediately, that something had come up with work. He left me at the hotel to find my own way back." "When was this?" "Around midnight." I processed this information, trying to make sense of it. Cole had left the lake, headed back to the city. Was he coming home? Planning some counter-move? "There's more," Allison said quietly. While he was in the shower earlier that day, a notification came through on his phone. I shouldn't have looked, but it was right there, and She pulled out her own phone, scrolled through it, and turned the screen toward me. I took a screenshot. The image showed an email notification. Transfer complete. Cayman account ready. Per instructions. This was yesterday? I asked sharply. She nodded. After you called him about the cabin, I didn't think much of it at the time, but after hearing those later phone calls, she leaned forward. I think he's hiding money, Dina. Significant amounts of money. My mind raced. If Cole was moving assets offshore, it meant he was preparing for divorce, trying to shield resources from being divided. But why now? The timing suggested he'd been planning this before I discovered his affair. Why are you telling me this? I asked, watching her carefully. Why take his side? I'm not taking sides, she replied firmly. I'm doing what I wish someone had done for me 3 years ago. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. My ex-husband did the same thing Cole is doing to you. The lies, the gaslighting, the hidden finances. By the time I figured it out, he'd moved everything of value beyond my reach. I lost everything. My home, my savings, even my credit score. I'm still rebuilding. I studied her, searching for signs of manipulation or deception. Found only what appeared to be genuine regret. When did you realize Cole had lied about us being separated? I asked. When you texted me back last night. The way you responded. So certain, so clear. It didn't match what Cole had told me about you. She looked down at her coffee. And then I started noticing other inconsistencies. Things that hadn't quite added up before but that I'd ignored. The way he never took me to certain restaurants, how he always paid cash for certain things, how he'd never let me see his home in the city. Our home, I corrected automatically. Yes, your home. She met my gaze. Again. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Dina. I probably don't deserve it. But I thought you should know what he's doing financially before it's too late. The server returned with the bill. I reached for it, but Allison was faster. Please, she said. Let me at least do this. I let her pay, watching as she signed the receipt. As she gathered her belongings to leave, I made a decision. Allison, I said, stopping her. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. She hesitated, then nodded. Was the cabin the only time he took you to one of our properties? A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Properties? No. We usually met at hotels or at my place. She frowned slightly. The only other place was a condo downtown he said was an investment property. Penthouse with a view of the river. We were there a few times over the past month. My breath caught. We didn't own a downtown penthouse, but Cole's parents did. A luxury condo they used when visiting the city, to which Cole had keys. Another layer of betrayal, another family relationship damaged. Thank you for your honesty, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained despite the fresh wave of pain. Allison looked at me for a long moment. He's not who either of us thought he was, she said finally, then turned and walked out of the cafe. I remained seated, the small voice recorder still running in my purse, capturing the silence that followed her departure. The drive home from the cafe was a blur, my mind racing with everything Allison had revealed. Cole was hiding money offshore. His closest friends had supported his deception. He'd used his parents' condo for his affair. Each new betrayal compounded the last, creating a mosaic of deceit that stretched back years. I called Mario from the car, using the hands-free system. I need to meet again, I said when he answered. Cole is moving money offshore, I have evidence. Come now, he replied without hesitation. I'll clear my schedule. By the time I reached Mario's office, I had already forwarded him the screenshot Allison had sent me. The recording of our conversation was uploading to a secure server Cameron had helped me set up, a digital vault for evidence that Cole couldn't access. This complicates things, Mario said, studying the email notification. But it also strengthens your position if he's attempting to hide marital assets. What do? We file immediately, today, and we request an emergency injunction freezing. All assets. He looked up from his computer. We'll need a judge to sign off, but with this evidence, I believe we can get it done. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me despite the escalation. Do it. While Mario worked on the filing, I stepped into his conference room to call Cameron. As I was about to dial, a text came through from an unknown number. It's Cole's mother. Eleanor, we need to talk. Can you come to our house this afternoon? I stared at the message, caught off guard. Eleanor and Richard Taylor had always been kind to me, welcoming me into their family with genuine warmth. Unlike many of Cole's wealthy friends, they had never made me feel like an outsider despite my more modest background. The thought of them, learning about Cole's betrayal, especially his use of their condo, brought a fresh wave of pain. I replied, I can be there at 3. The response was immediate. Thank you. Just you, please. By the time I left Mario's office, the emergency injunction had been filed and we were awaiting a judge's signature. The divorce papers would be ready for my signature that evening, and Cole would be served as soon as he returned to the city. Don't engage with him directly, Mario cautioned as I left. If he calls, direct him to me. If he shows up at your house, don't let him in. Everything goes through legal channels now. I drove to the Taylors' stately home in the city's most exclusive neighborhood with a sense of dread. How much did they know? Had Cole already spoken to them, spun his version of events? The thought of having to tell these people I cared about that their son had betrayed not just me but them as well was almost unbearable. Eleanor opened the door before I could ring the bell, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. She pulled me into a tight hug. Oh, Dina, she whispered. I'm so sorry. She led me through the marble-floored entryway into their sunroom, where Richard sat waiting. He stood when I entered, his expression grave. Cole called us this morning, Eleanor explained as we sat. He said you'd had a misunderstanding, that you were acting irrationally, freezing accounts and changing locks. I tensed, preparing to defend myself, but Richard held up a hand. We didn't. Believe him, he said firmly. Not for a second. Eleanor reached over to squeeze my hand. We've seen the changes in him these past few years. The excuses, the absences, the way he talks about you when you're not around. Little criticisms, little dismissals. It wasn't the son we raised. I felt tears threatening for the first time since discovering Cole's betrayal. Not for the loss of my marriage, but for the kindness of these two people who had every reason to side with their son, but had chosen truth instead. There's something else, Richard continued, his voice tightening. Something you need to know. Eleanor nodded encouragingly at her husband, and he took a deep breath before continuing. Cole has been borrowing against his trust fund, significant amounts over the past year. We received notification because we're still trustees until he turns 40. He paused. The most recent withdrawal was yesterday, $2 million. I felt the blood drain from my face. $2 million? Richard nodded grimly. We tried to reach him, to ask what was happening, but he's not answering our calls. Then this morning, our property manager called to tell us someone had been staying in our condo without authorization. We put it together, Eleanor added. And when we tried to confront Cole, that's when he told us about your misunderstanding. I'm filing for divorce, I said quietly. Today, Mario is handling it. Good, Richard said with surprising firmness. And we want to help. Eleanor nodded. We've already contacted our bank. Cole's access to the trust has been temporarily suspended pending investigation of potential fraudulent activity. We've also changed the locks on the condo and revoked his keys. I stared at them, overwhelmed by their support. Why are you doing this? He's your son. Because what he's doing is wrong, Richard said simply. And because we helped create this situation. What do you mean? Eleanor looked down, guilt evident in her expression. The money, the privilege, the easy path we provided. We thought we were giving him advantages, but instead, we raised him to feel entitled, to take what he wants without consequences. We failed him as parents, Richard added, but that doesn't mean we should help him hurt you or anyone else. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process their unexpected alliance. They weren't just offering moral support, they were actively working to hold their son accountable. There's one more thing, Eleanor said, reaching for an envelope on the side table. We want you to have this. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a check for $200,000 and a key. What is this? I asked, confused. The beach house in North Carolina, Richard explained. We're signing it over to you. The paperwork is being drawn up now. The money is to help you rebuild. However you choose. I tried to hand it back. I can't accept this. You can, and you will, Eleanor insisted. It's not a gift. It's restitution. Cole took years of your life, your trust, your security. This is the least we can do. Besides, Richard added with a sad smile, you're the one who found that property, who oversaw the renovation, who made it beautiful. Cole just paid for it with family money he didn't earn. It belongs with you. I looked down at the check, the key, feeling a tangle of emotions I couldn't begin to unravel. The beach house had been purchased 3 years ago, a Taylor family property in name, but one I had poured my heart into designing. I'd always loved it more than Cole had. Think about it, Eleanor said gently. You don't have to decide today. As I drove home, the envelope sat heavy in my purse. The Taylor's offer represented a future I hadn't allowed myself to imagine yet, one where I wasn't fighting Cole for every penny, where I had the resources to start over on my own terms. It was tempting, so tempting, but it also felt like a test. Would I take the easier path, allow Cole's parents to solve my problems? Or would I stand on my own, whatever that might cost me? I didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt I had choices. I returned home from the Taylors to find Cameron waiting on my porch, concern etched across her face. Where have you been? She demanded as I approached. I've been calling. For hours. I realized my phone had been on silent since my meeting with Mario. Sorry, it's been eventful. Inside, I told her everything. The meeting with Allison, the offshore accounts, the emergency injunction, and finally, the Taylors' unexpected support and their offer of money and the beach house. Take it, Cameron said immediately. After what Cole's put you through, you deserve that and more. I sighed, sinking deeper into the couch. It's not that simple. If I take it, I'm still letting Cole's family solve my problems. I'm still tied to them, to him in a way. It's not solving your problems. It's compensation for damages, Cameron countered. Besides, you said yourself you're the one who renovated that beach house. You put your heart into it. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Mario. The judge signed the emergency injunction, he said when I answered. All known accounts are frozen, and Cole will be legally prevented from moving any marital assets once he's served. Speaking of which, do you know where he is? The process server has been trying to locate him. No, I admitted. Last I heard, he was heading back to the city, but that was last night. Let me know if you hear from him. And remember, don't engage directly. I had barely ended the call when a text came through from Allison. Cole just called me. He's furious. Says you're trying to ruin him. Be careful. I showed the message to Cameron, who immediately stood. I'm staying here tonight. No arguments. He won't come here, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced. It would only make things worse for him legally. People don't always think rationally when they're cornered, Cameron replied, already heading to the guest room to prepare it. Especially people like Cole who aren't used to losing. I couldn't argue with that. Throughout our marriage, I'd never seen Cole truly lose at anything. His family connections, his natural charm, his ruthless strategic thinking, they had always ensured he came out on top. What would he do now that the tables had turned? As if on cue, my phone lit up with his name. I let it go to voicemail following Mario's instructions. A minute later, the notification appeared. I hesitated, then played it on speaker so Cameron could hear. Dina? His voice was controlled, but I could hear the simmering rage beneath. I just got a call from my bank. All my accounts are frozen. All of them. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this needs to stop now. Call me back. Cameron raised an eyebrow. He still thinks he can order you around. A second voicemail followed almost immediately. And my parents? Really? You had to drag them into this? They've revoked my trust access. Do you have any idea what you've done? His voice was less controlled now, the anger bleeding through more obviously. He hasn't been served yet, I realized aloud. He doesn't even know about the divorce filing. When he finds out, Cameron trailed off. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. I'm coming home. We need to talk face to face. Be there at 8. I showed Cameron, who immediately called her husband to come over too. You're not facing him alone, she insisted. I didn't argue. While part of me wanted to confront Cole directly, to look him in the eye as his carefully constructed world collapsed around him, I knew Mario was right. Everything needed to go through legal channels now. Emotion would only cloud judgment. I texted Mario. Cole says he's coming here at 8 p.m. Can the process server be here? Perfect. We'll arrange it. Stay inside. Let the server handle it. By 7:30, Cameron's husband Anton, not to be confused with Anton from the lake, had arrived, along with the process server, a stocky, impassive man named Morris who positioned himself discreetly across the street in an unmarked car. At precisely 8:02 p.m., Cole's BMW pulled into the driveway. Stay inside, Morris had instructed. Let me approach him outside. We watched through the living room window as Cole strode toward the house, his posture rigid with anger. Before he reached the porch, Morris intercepted him, extending an envelope. Even from a distance, I could see Cole's expression morph from confusion to shock to fury as he realized what was happening. He snatched the papers, scanned them briefly, then looked up at the house, directly at the window where I stood watching. The raw hatred in his eyes sent a chill through me. He pulled out his phone, and seconds later, mine rang. Against my better judgment against Mario's explicit instructions, I answered. You think this changes anything? Cole hissed, his voice barely recognizable. You think you've won? This isn't about winning, Cole, I replied, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. It's about consequences. Consequences? He laughed, a harsh sound stripped of anything resembling humor. You have no idea what real consequences look like, Dina, but you will. Is that a threat? It's a promise. His voice dropped lower. You think you know me? You think you know what I'm capable of? You haven't seen anything yet. Actually, I think I'm finally seeing you clearly for the first time, I countered. The real Cole Taylor, not the charming facade you've maintained all these years. He was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, his tone had changed. Cooler, more controlled. You know, it's funny. I was going to end things with Allison this weekend. That's why I took her to the cabin. One last trip before I broke it off. I was coming back to you to try again. But now you've made that impossible. The lie was so blatant, so calculated to make me question myself, that it almost made me laugh. Do you actually believe that? Or do you just think I'm stupid enough to believe it? Believe what you want, he said dismissively. But remember this moment. When everything falls apart, when you're alone with nothing, Remember that you chose this. No, Cole. You chose this the first time you lied, the first time you cheated. Every step that led here was your choice. He hung up without another word, got back in his car and sped away, the papers tossed on the passenger seat. Well, Cameron said from behind me, that went about as well as could be expected. I turned from the window, exhausted but oddly relieved. It's done. He knows. My phone buzzed with a text from Mario. Process server confirms delivery. You're officially in divorce proceedings. Remember, no direct contact with Cole from now on. Too late for that warning, but I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. I had heard everything I needed to hear from Cole. His threats, his manipulation, his refusal to accept responsibility. And more importantly, I had heard myself standing firm against him, seeing through his tactics, refusing to be swayed. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made my decision about the tailor's offer. I would accept the beach house but return the check. I wanted the home I had poured my heart into, but I needed to stand on my own financially, to rebuild without the safety net Cole's family could provide. It was a compromise between independence and practicality, between pride and self-preservation. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was making choices based on what I truly wanted, not in reaction to what Cole had done. As I drifted toward sleep, my phone chimed with an email notification. Half asleep, I glanced at it, then sat bolt upright as I registered the sender, Cole's executive assistant, Lucy. The subject line read, "You need to see these files. Cole doesn't know I'm sending them." Sleep forgotten, I opened the email to find a single line of text. I can't be part of this anymore. And several large attachments. I stared at my laptop screen, hand pressed to my mouth as I scrolled through. Lucy's files. Sleep was no longer a possibility. Lucy had been Cole's executive assistant for 5 years, a quiet, efficient woman who always remembered my birthday and asked about my projects when we spoke. I'd always liked her but never considered that she might see things at the office that I couldn't, or that she might ultimately choose loyalty to ethics over loyalty to Cole. The files were meticulous, organized with the precision I'd expect from someone in her position. Financial records, email exchanges, calendar entries, photos. Together, they painted a devastating picture not just of Cole's infidelity, which now appeared to extend well beyond Allison, but of something far worse. "Cameron," I called, my voice strained. "You need to see this." My sister appeared in the doorway, bleary-eyed, but instantly alert at my tone. "What is it?" "Evidence," I said, turning the screen toward her. "Not just of affairs, of fraud. The documents showed a pattern of financial mismanagement at Cole's firm, client funds directed into personal accounts, fabricated investment returns, falsified statements. Cole wasn't just hiding money from me. He was hiding money from his clients, his partners, possibly even federal regulators. This is..." Cameron trailed off, scrolling through the files. "This is prison-worthy stuff, Dina." I nodded, still processing the magnitude of what I was seeing. Lucy included notes explaining each document. She says she's been collecting evidence for months, ever since she discovered discrepancies in the books. She was afraid to come forward because Cole had made thinly veiled threats about her job, her reputation. What changed her mind? According to her email, Cole asked her to backdate some documents yesterday, after he found out I'd discovered the affair. He's trying to cover his tracks, make it look like certain transactions happened earlier than they did. I pointed to a particular note. She writes that she can't be complicit in fraud on top of everything else. Cameron whistled softly. "So this isn't just about you anymore. This is about Cole potentially facing criminal charges." The realization hit me with physical force. This wasn't just a divorce case anymore. The stakes had escalated beyond anything I had imagined. If these documents were authentic, and Lucy's detailed explanation suggested they were, Cole was facing potential criminal prosecution. "I need to call Mario," I said, reaching for my phone despite the late hour. My attorney answered on the third ring, his voice tense. "Dina, is everything all right?" "I've received documents," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "From Cole's assistant. They show financial fraud at his firm, possibly going back years. I'm forwarding them to you now." A pause, then. "This changes the landscape entirely. Don't discuss this with anyone else. I'll review everything and call you in the morning." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the damning evidence, the years of deception extending far beyond our marriage. The man I had built a life with wasn't just unfaithful, he was potentially criminal. Had I ever really known him at all? By morning, Mario had reviewed everything and called an emergency meeting at his office. He greeted me with unusual gravity, ushering me directly into his conference room where a woman I didn't recognize waited. "This is Veronica Walsh," he introduced. "She's a prosecutor with the White Collar Crimes Division. Given what's in those files, I thought it prudent to involve her immediately." My stomach tightened. "Am I in trouble?" Veronica shook her head. "Not at all, Ms. Taylor. But your husband might be in significant legal jeopardy, and we need to establish that you had no knowledge or involvement in his financial activities." The meeting lasted 3 hours. I answered endless questions about our finances, my awareness of Cole's business dealings, when and how I had received Lucy's files. By the end, both Mario and Veronica seemed satisfied that I was an unwitting bystander to Cole's schemes. "What happens now?" I asked as the meeting concluded. "From a divorce perspective, this strengthens your position considerably," Mario explained. "If Cole is facing potential criminal charges, he'll be more likely to settle quickly and generously rather than drag things out in court where more evidence might surface." "And from a criminal perspective?" I turned to Veronica. "My office will need to investigate," she replied carefully. "The evidence is compelling, but we need corroboration. We'll need to speak with Lucy, review original documents, potentially issue subpoenas." "How long will that take?" "Weeks, possibly months. These investigations are thorough by necessity." I nodded, trying to absorb the implications. Should I be concerned for my safety? Cole was threatening when he was served the divorce papers. Mario and Veronica exchanged glances. "It might be prudent to take precautions," Veronica advised. "Not to alarm you, but individuals facing this level of exposure sometimes become desperate." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Cole had already demonstrated his capacity for deception, his willingness to threaten when cornered. What would he do if he discovered that criminal charges might be forthcoming? As if reading my thoughts, Mario spoke. "I think you should consider relocating temporarily, Dina. Somewhere Cole wouldn't think to look." "The beach house," I said immediately. "The Taylor's offer. I was going to accept the property, but not the money." Mario nodded approvingly. "Perfect. It's not in your name yet. Not a place Cole would associate with you independently of his family. You could leave today. Be there. By evening." When I left the office, a strange calm had settled over me. The shock of Lucy's revelations had given way to a crystalline clarity. The path forward wasn't easy, but for the first time, it was clear. I called Eleanor Taylor from the car. "I'd like to accept your offer of the beach house," I said when she answered. "But not the money. The property is enough. More than enough." "I understand," she replied, her voice warm with relief. "The paperwork is ready. We can meet this afternoon to sign everything." "Actually," I hesitated, "I was hoping to go there today, to stay for a while." A pause, then. "Of course. Richard will have the caretaker prepare everything. Are you all right, Dina?" I considered the question. Was I all right? My marriage was over. My husband was a fraud in every sense of the word. My life had been upended in ways I was still struggling to comprehend. And yet, I will be, I said finally, with a conviction that surprised me. For the first time in a long time, I think I really will be. When I hung up, I realized something fundamental had shifted inside me. I was no longer reacting to Cole's betrayal, no longer defining my actions in opposition to his. I was moving forward on my own terms, toward a future that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't just a house I was reclaiming. It was myself. The North Carolina coastline unfurled before me as I drove the final stretch to the beach house, windows down despite the autumn chill. 5 hours of driving had cleared my head in a way nothing else could have. Each mile had put physical distance between me and the chaos in the city, between the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. Before leaving, I had set everything in motion with a methodical precision that felt foreign yet satisfying. I met with the Taylors to sign the beach house paperwork, the property officially transferred into my name alone. I arranged for a security company to monitor my house in the city. I forwarded my mail to a P.O. box that Cameron would check. I packed only what I needed: clothes, laptop, important documents. The rest could wait. Cameron had helped me load my car, her eyes shining with a mixture of worry and pride. "You'll call when you get there?" "The moment I'm settled," I promised, hugging her fiercely. "And you'll let me visit next weekend? I'll text you the security gate code." Now, as I pulled into the private drive leading to the beach house, a strange sense of homecoming washed over me. I had always loved this place more than Cole had. The weathered cedar shingles, the wraparound porch, the panoramic ocean views. I had selected every paint color, every fixture, every piece of furniture during the renovation 2 years ago. In many ways, it already felt more like my home than the city house ever had. The caretaker, Mike, greeted me at the door with keys, and a sympathetic smile that told me the Taylors had explained at least some of the situation. "Everything's ready for you, Ms. Taylor. Fresh linens, stocked fridge, security system updated with new codes." "Thank you, Mike, and please call me Dina." "Yes, ma'am, Dina." He handed me a folder. "These are the new security codes, gate access, everything you'll need." I took the liberty of having the locks changed as well, just to be safe. I raised an eyebrow at this unexpected precaution. "Mr. Taylor's instructions," he explained, "said it was better to be thorough." I nodded, grateful. For Richard's foresight, Cole had never shown much interest in the beach house, rarely accompanying me on my frequent visits to oversee the renovation. But he did have keys, or had, until now. After Mike left, I walked through the house, reacquainting myself with its spaces. The great room with its soaring ceiling and wall of windows facing the ocean. The kitchen with the antique butcher block island I'd found at a local salvage yard. The primary bedroom with its private deck where I'd spent countless mornings watching the sunrise over the Atlantic. It was exactly as I remembered, yet completely different. Now it was mine alone, untouched by Cole's betrayal. I called Cameron to let her know I'd arrived safely, then sent a brief email to Mario with my new address and contact information, marked confidential. I would be accessible but protected, available for legal proceedings but removed from Cole's immediate reach. Just as I was unpacking, my phone chimed with a text from Lucy. "Cole knows the files are missing. He's looking for me. I've already spoken with the prosecutor and I'm staying with family out of state. Stay safe." A chill ran through me despite the beach house's warm interior. Cole was becoming increasingly desperate, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. I texted back a quick thanks for the warning, then checked that all doors and windows were securely locked. With nothing left to do but wait, I made myself tea and sat on the deck, watching the waves crash against the shore as twilight settled over the water. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened: the betrayal, the lies, the shock of discovering the stranger I had married. Tears came, not the heaving sobs of fresh grief, but the quieter tears of mourning something already lost. I wasn't crying for the marriage I had now. I was crying for the marriage I had thought I had, for the years spent loving someone who had never truly existed, except in my imagination. By morning, the storm of emotion had passed, leaving behind a strange, clean clarity. I made coffee and took it to the small office nook off the great room, ready to begin the practical work of rebuilding my life. First, I called my business partner to explain I'd be working remotely for the foreseeable future. Then I contacted my accountant to separate any remaining financial entanglements with Cole. Finally, I reached out to a local realtor about potentially selling the city house after the divorce, a step toward cutting one more tie to my old life. Around noon, Mario called with updates. The prosecutor's office has opened a formal investigation, he reported. They've already interviewed Lucy and are gathering additional evidence. Cole hasn't been charged yet, but it's likely just a matter of time. Has he responded to the divorce filing? I asked. Not formally, no. His attorney requested an extension, which is standard. But unofficially, I've heard he's furious about the injunction freezing the assets. He's telling people you've fabricated allegations to damage his reputation. I almost laughed. Of course he is. On a more practical note, Mario continued, the court date for the initial hearing is set for 3 weeks from now. You'll need to appear in person. I'll be there, I assured him. After we hung up, I sat in contemplative silence. 3 weeks of peace before I would have to face Cole in court. 3 weeks to strengthen my resolve, to prepare myself for whatever tactics he might employ. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Where are you? We need to talk. This has gone far enough. Cole. How had he gotten this number? I had changed it yesterday before leaving the city, sharing it only with Cameron, Mario, and the Taylors. Before I could ponder this, another text arrived from the same number. I know you're reading these. If you don't respond, I'll have no choice but to come find you. You can't hide forever. A threat, thinly veiled. I forwarded the messages to Mario with a quick note explaining that I'd changed my number, but Cole had somehow obtained it. Then I blocked the number and put my phone on silent. I wouldn't engage. I wouldn't be baited into responding. Cole wanted a reaction. Anger, fear, anything to confirm he still had some power over me. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I opened my laptop and began working on design concepts for a new commercial project. Normal, productive work that had nothing to do with Cole or the divorce or the upheaval of the past days. For a few hours, I could lose myself in color palettes and spatial arrangements, in the creative process that had always been my sanctuary. Outside, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm, waves building, cresting, breaking against the shore. There was something comforting in its constancy, in the reminder that some forces were beyond anyone's control, even Cole's. This storm, too, would eventually pass. And when it did, I would still be standing. A week passed at the beach house, each day blending into the next with a peaceful rhythm that had been absent from my life for too long. I established new routines. Early morning walks along the shore, afternoons working from the sunlit office nook, evenings on the deck watching the sun sink into the Atlantic. Without Cole's constant presence, without the subtle pressure to arrange my day around his preferences, I rediscovered simple pleasures I had gradually abandoned over the years. Cameron called daily with updates from the city. Cole had been seen at his office, looking haggard according to mutual friends. His firm had released a cryptic statement about internal reviews of certain financial procedures, language that suggested the criminal investigation was gaining traction. Lucy remained out of state, cooperating with prosecutors from a distance. And, get this, Cameron said during our Friday check-in, Allison apparently quit her job at the firm, just gave notice and walked out. Smart move, I replied, watching seagulls wheel over the waves. She's distancing herself before everything implodes. She also reached out to me, asking for your new contact information. I paused, surprised. What did you tell her? That I'd pass along her request. She says she has more information that might help you. Something about foreign accounts she discovered. I considered this. Allison had proven herself unexpectedly. Honest at our cafe meeting, and additional financial evidence could strengthen both the divorce case and the criminal investigation. Give her my email address, but not my phone number or location. Later that afternoon, an email arrived from Allison with several attachments: account numbers, transaction records, screenshots of communications. I found these on Cole's laptop when he left it open at my apartment last month, she wrote. At the time, I didn't understand their significance, but after our conversation, I went back through the photos I'd taken. These might be useful to your attorney. I forwarded everything to Mario, who responded within the hour. This is exactly what we needed. Evidence of additional hidden assets the injunction didn't capture. Well done. For the first time since discovering Cole's betrayal, I felt a glimmer of satisfaction. The tables had turned so completely. The man who had built his life around controlling others, manipulating circumstances to his advantage, was now being undone by the very women he had underestimated. My sense of cautious optimism was reinforced. The next day, when Veronica, the prosecutor, called with an update. We've executed a search warrant at your husband's office, she informed me. Based on the evidence from his assistant and other sources, we had sufficient cause to seize computers and financial records. What does this mean for the timeline? I asked. We're moving faster than anticipated. The evidence is more substantial than we initially thought. Your husband's attorney has been informed that charges are likely forthcoming. Has Cole been arrested? Not yet, but we've restricted his travel. He's surrendered his passport and is required to remain in the state pending our investigation. After we hung up, I sat on the deck, absorbing this news. Cole's world was collapsing with a speed and completeness I hadn't anticipated. The man who had always prided himself on staying one step ahead of everyone had finally been outmaneuvered. That evening, I received a rare call from Richard Taylor. I thought you should hear this directly from me, he said after preliminary greetings. Cole came to see us today. I tensed. What did he want? To know if we'd heard from you, if we knew where you were. Richard's voice remained steady. He seemed unstable. Accused us of taking your side against our own son. What did you tell him? The truth, that we value integrity over blind loyalty, even with family. Especially with family. A heavy sigh. He didn't take it well. Started making accusations, claiming you'd manipulated us, turned us against him. I'm sorry, I said, genuinely pained for them. This can't be easy for you. It isn't, Richard admitted. But Eleanor and I keep reminding ourselves that the son we raised, or thought we raised, wouldn't do the things Cole has done. Somewhere, along the way, he made choices that took him down a different path. Did he ask about the beach house? I couldn't help wondering if Cole had connected the dots, realized where I might be. No. And we didn't volunteer anything. But Dina, his voice dropped slightly. Be vigilant. Cole has always been resourceful when determined. And right now, he's desperate. The warning lingered in my mind after we hung up. I double-checked all doors and windows before bed, grateful for the property's gated entrance and isolated location. Cole had never shown violent tendencies, but then again, I had never before threatened his carefully constructed facade. The next morning, a Saturday, I woke to an email from Mario with "progress" in the subject line. The judge had ruled on our emergency motion, officially recognizing the additional offshore accounts Allison had revealed. All of them were now included in the asset freeze. Furthermore, the court had denied Cole's request to access any of the frozen funds for legal fees related to the criminal investigation. He'll have to use his personal savings or borrow money for his criminal defense, Mario wrote, which means he's running out of resources quickly. This significantly improves our negotiating position for the divorce settlement. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel something close to triumph. Not because I wanted to punish Cole, though part of me certainly did, but because justice seemed to be functioning as it should. Actions had consequences, even for people like Cole who had spent a lifetime avoiding them. I spent the day working. In the garden, planting fall flowers in beds that had been neglected over the summer, there was something deeply satisfying about driving my hands into the soil, creating something beautiful, and living in a space that was now truly mine. With each plant I settled into the ground, I felt more firmly rooted myself, more connected to this place and the new life I was building. Cameron texted in the afternoon, still planning to visit tomorrow. Any requests from civilization? I smiled at her description of the city as civilization compared to my beachfront paradise. Just yourself and maybe some of that coffee from the place near your apartment, I replied. Her response came quickly. Already packed some. See you around noon. Can't wait to see your Zen retreat. As the sun began to set, I took my customary walk along the shoreline, breathing in the salt air, feeling the cool sand beneath my feet. 3 weeks ago, I had been a different person, a woman who believed her marriage was simply going through a rough patch, who defined herself largely as Cole Taylor's wife, who had gradually surrendered pieces of herself to maintain a relationship. That turned out to be built on lies. Now that woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, clearer, more defined by her own choices than by someone else's betrayal. I was still standing at the water's edge, watching darkness settle over the horizon, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Beautiful sunset, isn't it? The beach has always suited you. I froze, scanning the darkening beach in both directions. Empty, as far as I could. See, another text. You should be more careful about who follows your sister from the city. Cole had found me. My feet felt rooted to the sand as I scanned the darkening beach once more. Still empty, but Cole was here, somewhere, watching. My heartbeat accelerated, but my mind remained strangely clear. I would not panic. I would not run blindly. That's what he wanted, to see me frightened, to regain some measure of control. I typed a quick response. What do you want, Cole? To talk. Face to face, no lawyers, no accusations, just us. I hesitated, weighing my options. The beach house was a quarter-mile. Back, its lights visible from where I stood. If I headed there, Cole would likely follow, and I didn't want him inside my sanctuary. The nearby public beach access had a small parking area with security cameras. Better to confront him in a place with potential witnesses and surveillance. Meet me at the public beach pavilion in 10 minutes, I texted. Come alone, or I call the police. His response was immediate. Already here. I took a deep breath and called Cameron. When she answered, I kept my voice low and steady. Cole is here. He followed you to the beach house. What? That's impossible. I would have noticed. Apparently not. Listen carefully. I'm meeting him at the public pavilion. If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, call the police. Dina, no. Don't meet him alone. I need to handle this myself, I interrupted. But I need to know someone has my back. After extracting Cameron's reluctant promise, I called Mario and left a detailed voicemail explaining the situation, then sent a quick text to Richard Taylor with the same information. Witnesses, documentation, evidence that I had anticipated potential trouble. Cole wasn't the only one who could think strategically. The pavilion was lit by a single floodlight, casting long shadows across the weathered wooden structure. As I approached, a figure detached itself from the darkness. Cole, looking nothing, like the polished, confident man I had married. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed, his shirt wrinkled. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "How did you find me?" I asked, stopping 10 feet away from him. He gave a hollow laugh. "You think I don't know my own parents?" The beach house was the obvious move. "And following my sister? That's stalking, Cole." I prefer to call it being resourceful. His voice had a brittle edge I'd never heard before. "Since you've blocked my calls, changed your number, and turned my parents against me, I had limited options." "You turned your parents against yourself," I corrected. "Just like you destroyed our marriage all on your own." He flinched slightly but recovered quickly. "That's what I wanted to talk about. This divorce, these allegations. Things have gone too far, Dina. We need to find a solution that works for both of us." "Both of us?" I repeated incredulously. "You've been cheating for years. You lied to everyone, including your girlfriend. You're being investigated for serious financial crimes. And you think we can find a friendly solution?" "The criminal investigation is a misunderstanding," he said dismissively. "Corporate finance is complex. Lucy misinterpreted legitimate transactions. And the offshore accounts? The millions you've hidden? Those are just misunderstandings too?" His eyes narrowed dangerously. "You need to drop this, Dina. Call off your attack dogs. Tell the prosecutor you made a mistake." I almost laughed at his audacity. "I can't call off an investigation I didn't initiate. This is bigger than me now, Cole. The evidence speaks for itself." "Evidence can be interpreted different ways," he countered, taking a step closer. "People can change their testimonies. Lucy, Allison. They could reconsider what they think they know." The implied threat hung in the air between us. "Are you threatening? To intimidate witnesses in a federal investigation? Because that would be another crime on top of everything else." "I'm simply pointing out that misunderstandings can be cleared up," he said, his voice softening into the persuasive tone he'd used countless times to talk clients into his way of thinking. "We had a good life together, Dina. We still could. Drop the divorce. Tell everyone you overreacted about Allison. We can work through this." For a suspended moment, I tried to see the situation through his eyes. A man so accustomed to controlling the narrative, to bending reality to his will, that he genuinely believed he could charm his way out of the consequences of his actions. Even now, facing criminal charges and divorce, he thought he could manipulate me back into compliance. "No," I said simply. Cole blinked, as if the word was incomprehensible to him. "What?" "No," I repeated more firmly. "I'm not dropping the divorce. I'm not calling off the investigation. I'm not going back to a marriage built on lies. This conversation is over." I turned to leave, heart pounding but step steady. I had said what needed saying. There was nothing left to discuss. "You don't walk away from me," Cole growled, grabbing my arm. Before I could react, headlights swept across the pavilion as a car pulled into the parking area. Cole released me immediately, stepping back into the shadows. The car door opened and Richard Taylor emerged, his tall figure unmistakable even in the dim light. "Dina?" he called. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I replied, relief washing through me. "Cole was just leaving." Cole stared at his father in disbelief. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "Making sure no one does something they'll regret," Richard answered calmly, approaching us. "It's time to go, son. This isn't helping your situation." "You're taking her side again," Cole accused, gesturing toward me. "Your own son—" "I'm trying to protect you from yourself," Richard interrupted. "Every move you make right now is being watched. Following Dina here, confronting her, it only makes things worse for you. You don't understand what's at stake," Cole insisted. "I understand perfectly," Richard countered. "Now, I've called you a car. It's waiting at the main road. Go back to the city, talk to your attorney, and stop making impulsive decisions that will only hurt your case." The authority in Richard's voice seemed to penetrate Cole's desperation. He looked from his father to me, his expression hardening into something cold and remote. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "It is," I replied, "whether you accept it or not." Cole turned and walked away, his figure soon swallowed by the darkness beyond the pavilion's light. Richard and I stood in silence until the sound of his footsteps faded completely. "Thank you," I said finally. "How did you get here so quickly?" "I was already on my way when I got your text," Richard explained. "Eleanor and I were concerned after Cole's visit yesterday. We thought you might need support before Cameron arrives tomorrow." I took a shaky breath, the adrenaline beginning to ebb. "I think he would have—" "I know," Richard said gently. "Come on, let's get you back to the house. I have a security team arriving in the morning. Cole won't get near you again." As we walked back along the beach, I felt something shift inside me. The last lingering doubt about my decision to leave Cole, to pursue divorce, to cooperate with the investigation. Any woman who needs protection from her husband has already stayed too long. I had made the right choice, and I would never look back. The security team arrived at dawn. Two discreet professionals who established a perimeter around the beach house and installed additional cameras at strategic points. Richard had spared no expense, hiring a firm that specialized in protecting high-profile clients during contentious divorces. Their presence was both reassuring and sobering. A reminder that Cole's desperation made him unpredictable, potentially dangerous. "We've run a thorough sweep of the property," the team leader, a former military officer named Garcia, informed me. "No surveillance devices, no signs of attempted entry. We'll maintain 24-hour coverage until further notice." Cameron arrived shortly. Before noon, her car followed by an unmarked security vehicle that had intercepted her at the main road, a precaution to ensure Cole hadn't tracked her again. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately, pulling me into a tight hug. "I had no idea he was following me. I should have been more careful." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "Cole's resources and desperation make him formidable. But it's handled now." I gestured toward Garcia, who was conducting another perimeter check. Richard made sure of that. Inside, over lunch, I recounted the confrontation with Cole, his attempts at manipulation, his barely veiled threats. "He's unraveling," Cameron observed. "The Cole Taylor I've known for years would never risk such a public confrontation. He's always operated behind the scenes, pulling strings without showing his hand." "That's what makes him dangerous now," I said quietly. "He's not calculating anymore. He's reacting. And he blames me for everything. The investigation, his parents' disapproval, the freezing of his assets. In his mind, if I would just cooperate, all his problems would disappear." My phone rang. Mario, returning my call from the previous night. I put him on speaker. "I've submitted an emergency restraining order based on last night's incident," he said without preamble. "The judge should sign it today. In the meantime, stay with your security team. Don't go anywhere alone." "What about the court date next week?" I asked. "Cole will be there. We'll have additional security arranged, and given what happened, I'm going to request that Cole be required to stay a minimum distance from you in the courtroom." After we hung up, Cameron looked at me with concern. "Are you sure you want to go through with the hearing? Maybe Mario could request a postponement." I shook my head firmly. "No more delays. The longer this drags on, the more opportunity Cole has to find ways around the asset freeze, to pressure witnesses, to cause problems. I need this to be over." The next few days passed in tense vigilance. I continued working remotely, tried to maintain my new routines, but the carefree peace I had found at the beach house had been disturbed. Every unusual sound, every passing car drew my attention. Garcia assured me their team had encountered no further signs of Cole, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching, waiting. 3 days before the court hearing, Veronica called with news that simultaneously relieved and alarmed me. Cole Taylor has been arrested, she said, her voice professionally neutral. The grand jury returned indictments on multiple counts of wire fraud, financial institution fraud, and securities fraud. My breath caught. When? This morning. He's being processed now and will appear before a judge for arraignment tomorrow. What does this mean for the divorce hearing? It complicates things, Veronica admitted. His criminal attorney will likely request a continuance for the divorce proceedings while they deal with the criminal charges, but ultimately, this strengthens your position significantly. The evidence that led to his arrest is now part of the public record, which your divorce attorney can reference. After we hung up, I sat on the deck, absorbing this development. Cole's arrest was justice in action, consequences finally catching up to him after years of deception. But it also meant he was now fighting for his freedom, not just his assets or reputation. A cornered animal is most dangerous when it has nothing left to lose. I called Mario, who had already heard the news. This changes our strategy, he said. Cole's facing serious jail time. His priority now will be negotiating with prosecutors, not fighting you over the divorce settlement. Will he try to use me as a bargaining chip? I asked. Offer information in exchange for leniency? Possibly, but he'd need something substantial. From what I understand, the prosecution already has overwhelming evidence. Your testimony isn't essential to their case. The following morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls and messages. Overnight, news of Cole's arrest had broken, complete, with photos of him being escorted into the federal building in handcuffs. Friends, acquaintances, even former clients of my design firm had reached out. Some offering support, others seeking gossip, all expressing shock. I ignored most, responding only to those closest to me with brief assurances that I was safe and handling things as well as could be expected. The public spectacle was exactly what Cole had always feared most. His carefully constructed image of success and propriety shattered beyond repair. Just as I was finishing breakfast, Cameron called with news from the arraignment. Cole pleaded. Not guilty, she reported. But get this, the judge denied bail. Prosecutors successfully argued that he's a flight risk given the offshore accounts and the severity of the charges. He's in jail? I couldn't quite process it. County Detention Center, pending trial. His attorney tried to argue that he has strong community ties, but apparently the judge wasn't persuaded. Cole Taylor, the man who had navigated the upper echelons of finance with effortless charm, who had built a career on his ability to influence and persuade, couldn't talk his way out of a jail cell. The irony was almost too perfect. My relief was short-lived. That afternoon, I received an email from an anonymous account. The subject line simply, "A message from Cole." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Dina, by now you've heard about my arrest. I'm sure you're feeling vindicated, maybe even celebrating. Enjoy it while it lasts. What you don't understand is that I've prepared for this possibility. I always have contingency plans. Always. You think you've won because I'm behind bars? You think this ends with me in prison and you walking away with everything we built? You're wrong. I still have resources you can't touch. People who remain loyal to me. And I have nothing but time now to focus on ensuring you regret what you've done. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. You destroyed my life. I won't rest until I've returned the favor. Cole. I forwarded the email to Mario and Veronica immediately, my hands shaking despite my efforts to remain calm. Cole was in custody, but his reach extended beyond his cell. His network of professional connections, the loyal people he mentioned, how many might still be willing to act on his behalf? The beach house, which had been my sanctuary, suddenly felt exposed. The security team, which had been reassuring, now seemed insufficient against the nebulous threat Cole represented. We're moving you to a safer location, Garcia decided after reading the email. effective immediately. As I packed a small bag, I realized that even from behind bars, Cole had accomplished what he wanted, disrupting my peace, forcing me back into reaction mode, making me feel vulnerable again. The challenge had evolved, and so must I. The safe. House was a modern apartment in a secure building with underground parking and 24-hour doormen. Anonymous, unremarkable, and, most importantly, impossible to connect to me through any public records. The security company had maintained it for exactly this purpose, housing clients who needed to disappear temporarily. No one knows you're here except your sister, your attorney, and our team, Garcia assured me as he completed a sweep of the apartment. Not even Mr. Taylor Sr. has this address. I nodded, setting my single suitcase in the bedroom. The space was impersonal but comfortable, furnished with generic, inoffensive pieces that reminded me of upscale hotel rooms. Nothing like the beach house with its carefully curated design elements. Nothing like the home I had built with Cole, filled with memories both beautiful and now tainted. It was, in many ways, the perfect metaphor for my current existence. Functional, but temporary, a holding pattern until I could reclaim my life. Cameron arrived that evening with groceries and additional clothes she had gathered from my city house. Mario called, she informed me as we unpacked. Cole's attorney requested a continuance for the divorce hearing in light of the criminal charges. Let me guess, Mario opposed it? Vehemently. The judge hasn't ruled yet, but Mario thinks we have a good chance of proceeding as scheduled. Cole's arrest actually strengthens our argument for moving forward quickly, especially with that threatening email. I folded a sweater with precise movements, buying time as I considered my next words. I've been thinking about our strategy. Cameron raised an eyebrow. What about it? We've been reactive, responding to Cole's moves, protecting ourselves from his threats. It's kept us on the defensive since this began. I set the sweater down, meeting my sister's gaze directly. I'm tired of running, Cam. Tired of letting Cole dictate where I go, how I live, whether I feel safe in my own spaces. What are you suggesting? Cameron looked concerned. You can't go back to the beach house, not with Cole's threats still hanging over you. I'm not talking about physical locations, I clarified. I'm talking about mindset, about choosing a different approach altogether. The next morning, I requested a meeting with both Mario and Veronica. They arrived at the safe. House together? Expressions curious but cautious as I outlined what I wanted to do. You want to offer Cole a deal? Mario repeated, incredulous. After everything he's done? Not out of compassion, I explained. Out of strategy. Cole expects me to fight him to the bitter end, to demand everything I'm legally entitled to. He's prepared for that battle, has been preparing for it since before I discovered his affair. What exactly are you proposing? Veronica asked, her tone more measured. A clean break. I keep the beach house, my business, and a fair portion of our liquid assets. Cole keeps his personal possessions, family heirlooms, and enough to pay for his defense. Everything else gets liquidated, with a significant portion going to a foundation supporting victims of financial fraud. Mario shook his head. You're entitled to much more than that, especially given his criminal activities and infidelity. I know what I'm entitled to, I said firmly. I also know that continuing this fight keeps me tied to Cole indefinitely. Every court appearance, every contested asset, every legal maneuver, it's exactly what he wants. A way to maintain control, to keep me engaged in his drama. The criminal case will proceed regardless, Veronica pointed out. Cole is facing serious charges with substantial evidence. I understand that. My testimony and cooperation won't change. I leaned forward. But separating the divorce from the criminal proceedings gives me back something Cole has taken from me. Control over my own life. Both attorneys exchanged glances, their skepticism evident. There's one more element to my proposal, I continued. I want to visit Cole in jail, Present the offer myself, face to face? Absolutely not, Mario responded immediately. He threatened you explicitly. You have a restraining order. This would be both dangerous and potentially damaging to our case. It would be supervised, I countered, in a secure facility with guards present. Cole can't hurt me physically there. And psychologically? Cameron interjected from where she had been listening quietly. What about the impact of facing him again after everything? I turned to my sister, appreciating her concern. That's precisely why I need to do this. As long as I'm afraid to face Cole, as long as I'm running from confrontation, he still has power over me. I need to look him in the eye, on my terms, and show him I'm not afraid anymore. The room fell silent as they absorbed my words. Finally, Veronica spoke. I understand your reasoning, but there are serious risks to consider. Your offer, while generous, might be interpreted as weakness by Cole, and visiting him could give him an opportunity to manipulate or threaten you further. Or, I suggested, it could shock him enough to consider the offer. Cole expects me to be vindictive, to want revenge. An approach based on principled disengagement rather than punishment might be the one thing he hasn't prepared for. After more discussion and several compromises, including having both attorneys present during the jail visit and preparing a formal written agreement beforehand, they reluctantly agreed to my plan. The visit was arranged for the following day, before Cole could be transferred to a federal facility. That night, alone in the sterile safe house apartment, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would maintain my composure, how I would respond if Cole tried to provoke or manipulate me. I wasn't naive enough to believe he would simply accept my offer, grateful for my generosity. More likely, he would view it as a trap, searching for the hidden agenda behind my apparent reasonableness. But there was no hidden agenda, just the clear-eyed recognition that freedom, real freedom, meant walking away from the fight Cole wanted to have, choosing instead the path that would most quickly and completely sever our connection. Cameron called just before midnight. Are you sure about tomorrow? Really sure? More sure than I've been about anything in a long time, I replied, surprised by the conviction in my voice. I'll be waiting when you get back, she promised. Whatever happens. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the one who had watched her husband's betrayal unfold on a security camera feed just weeks ago. Her eyes were clearer, her posture straighter. Most noticeably, the anxious desire to please, to accommodate, to smooth over conflict, Cole's preferred qualities in me, had vanished. Tomorrow, I would face the man who had betrayed me, threatened me, tried to destroy me. And I would offer him a path to resolution that served my interests, not his need for continued conflict. It wasn't forgiveness. It was freedom. The county detention center was a stark, concrete structure ringed by chain-link fences topped with razor wire. As we passed through multiple security checkpoints, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The visiting room, a sterile space divided by a thick glass partition with intercoms for communication, removed any possibility of physical threat. Here, Cole could only use words, and words had lost their power to wound me. Mario sat beside me, legal documents arranged neatly on the small metal table. Veronica waited outside, unable to join us for this meeting due to her role in the prosecution, but available if needed. When Cole was led in by a corrections officer, I barely recognized him. Just weeks of detention had transformed the polished investment banker into someone diminished, hollowed out. The expensive suits were replaced by an orange jumpsuit, the confident stride by shuffling steps limited by ankle restraints. Only his eyes remained unchanged, cold, calculating, watching me for weaknesses to exploit. He sat across from us, his expression shifting from surprise to wariness to a carefully constructed neutral mask. He picked up the intercom receiver, and I did the same. "This is unexpected," he said, his voice tinny through the speaker. Come to gloat? No, I replied evenly. I've come with a proposal. His eyebrows lifted slightly, the only indication of his interest. What kind of proposal? Mario slid the document package through the narrow transfer slot. Cole took it with feigned nonchalance, but I noticed his fingers trembling slightly as he opened the folder. A divorce settlement, I explained as he scanned the pages. Clean, simple, final. Signed today, if you agree. His eyes narrowed. Why would you offer this now? You have me at a disadvantage. Your lawyers have made that abundantly clear. Because continuing this fight serves neither of us. It drains resources you need for your defense and keeps me tied to you indefinitely. This way, we both get freedom, albeit different kinds. Cole flipped through the papers with increasing disbelief. You're taking far less than you could get in court. I'm taking what matters to me, I corrected. The beach house, my business, financial independence. You keep your personal belongings, your family connections, and enough resources for legal representation. And the foundation? He gestured to a clause allocating a significant portion of our assets to a victim relief fund. That's just to humiliate me publicly. No, it's to do something constructive with money that would otherwise be consumed by our legal battle, something that helps repair some of the damage caused by financial fraud, not just yours, but others like you. Cole's jaw tightened at the comparison. You think you've figured it all out, don't you? The righteous wife taking the high road? There's nothing righteous about this, I said quietly. It's practical, strategic, the qualities you always claim to value. Something flashed in his eyes, recognition, perhaps. For the first time, he was seeing me clearly, not as the accommodating wife he had manipulated for years, but as an equal, strategist who had outmaneuvered him. And if I refuse? Mario spoke for the first time. Then we proceed with the original divorce filing. We'll seek maximum division of assets, including those you've attempted to hide offshore. The process will be lengthy, expensive, and public. Every detail of your affairs, your financial misconduct, your threats, all of it entered into the court record. Cole looked from Mario to me, searching for the trap. Why are you really doing this, Dina? I met his gaze steadily. Because I want to be free of you, Cole. Completely free. Not just legally, but psychologically. Fighting you for years keeps me bound to you, keeps me reacting to you. This way, I close this chapter definitively and move forward with my life. While I rot in prison, he added bitterly. Your criminal case is separate from our divorce, I reminded him. Nothing in this agreement affects those proceedings. That's the consequence of your own actions, not my choice. Cole fell silent, studying the documents more carefully now. I could see the calculations running behind his eyes, the weighing of options, the assessment of best possible outcomes given his circumstances. It was the same look he wore when evaluating investment opportunities, clinical and detached. I need to consult with my attorney, he said finally. Of course, Mario agreed. We've arranged for him to join us. Cole's criminal attorney arrived 30 minutes later. The two spoke privately in a separate room while Mario and I waited, neither of us speculating aloud about the outcome. When they returned, Cole's demeanor had shifted subtly. The initial hostility had receded, replaced by a grim pragmatism. I'll sign, he said, his voice flat. With 2 amendments. He outlined minor changes regarding personal items he wanted to retain. His grandfather's watch, some specific artwork, small concessions that cost me nothing to grant. As we finalized the paperwork, Cole kept glancing at me, as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the wife he thought he had known. You've changed, he said finally, as he signed the last page. No, I corrected him. I've always been this person. You just never bothered to see me clearly. With the final signature, 8 years of marriage ended not with drama or recriminations. but with the quiet efficiency of a business transaction. As the officer prepared to escort Cole back to his cell, he paused. "This doesn't change anything about how I feel," he said, his voice low. "About what you did to me. I didn't do this to you, Cole. You did it to yourself." I gathered my copy of the signed agreement, standing to leave. "And how you feel doesn't matter to me anymore." His face hardened at my indifference. Perhaps the greatest blow to a man who had always measured his worth by his impact on others. The door closed behind him with a heavy metallic thud, symbolic in its finality. Outside, in the harsh sunlight of the parking lot, Veronica waited by her car. "How did it go?" "It's done," I said simply. "He signed." She looked surprised. "Honestly, I didn't think he would. His attorney has been fighting us at every turn." "Cole's a strategist at heart," I explained. Once he realized this was his best available option, emotion became irrelevant. As we drove away from the detention center, I felt a weight lifting. Not suddenly, not completely, but noticeably. The divorce was settled. The legal entanglements that had bound me to Cole were dissolving. What remained was the work of psychological separation, of rebuilding a life defined by my own choices rather than his betrayal. That evening, as I packed to return to the beach house, now secure with an expanded security system and the knowledge that Cole was both incarcerated and legally separated from me, Cameron asked how I felt. "Vindicated?" she suggested. "Relieved?" I considered the question carefully. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." And for the first time since discovering Cole's betrayal, I realized it was true. 1 year later, I sat across from a woman named Melissa in a quiet corner of a beachfront cafe near my home. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her untouched coffee, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light. "I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "The evidence is right there on his phone, but when I confronted him, he made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the one with the problem for checking his messages." Nodded, recognizing the familiar pattern. Cameron had connected us after meeting Melissa at a fundraiser, a woman trapped in the same web of gaslighting and manipulation I had once been caught in. "He says he'll change," Melissa continued. "That it was just one mistake, that I'm overreacting." She looked up, her eyes searching mine. "Am I?" "No," I said firmly. "You're recognizing a pattern that part of you has probably sensed for a long time. But 8 years of marriage?" She trailed off, the same justification I had once used. "Tell me something," I said gently. "If your best friend came to you with this exact situation, what would you tell her?" Melissa fell silent, considering. "I'd tell her she deserves better." The realization seemed to surprise her. "I'd tell her that someone who truly loves her wouldn't betray her trust, then blame her for being upset about it." "Exactly. But it's different when it's your own life," she argued weakly. "There's so much history, so much at stake." "I know," I acknowledged. "I sat where you're sitting now. I made all the same excuses. I tried to rationalize behavior that was fundamentally irrational." "What changed for you? What was the turning point?" I considered the question carefully. It wasn't just discovering the affair, though that was the catalyst. It was realizing that the man I thought I married had never really existed. The real turning point was when I stopped trying to save what I had lost and started building what I needed instead. "Freedom," she murmured, echoing the word I had used moments earlier when describing my journey. "Yes. Freedom to define yourself outside of his narrative. Freedom to trust your own perceptions. Freedom to create boundaries and have them respected." Melissa nodded slowly, something resolute forming behind her eyes. "I don't even know where to start." I reached into my bag and handed her a folder, not unlike the one I had once received from Lucy, though with very different contents. Inside were resource lists, legal information, financial planning worksheets, contact information for supportive professionals. You start by knowing you're not alone, I said, and by remembering that the path out exists, even when you can't see it clearly yet. As we parted ways, Melissa hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me it's possible to get through this." I watched her walk away, back straighter than when she had arrived, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. My pain had become purpose. My experience, a map for someone else's journey toward freedom. 2 years after that fateful security alert on my phone, I stood on the deck of my beach house watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. The trial was long over. Cole had eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation against larger players in the financial fraud scheme. He was serving a 5-year sentence in a minimum security federal prison, his empire dismantled, his reputation destroyed. I no longer tracked his legal proceedings or cared about his circumstances. That chapter had closed definitively with our divorce, exactly as I had intended when offering the settlement. My design business had flourished, expanding beyond commercial spaces to include residential renovations for women rebuilding their lives after difficult endings. The beach house had become not just my home, but occasionally a retreat for others needing temporary sanctuary while finding their footing. I turned on the recording device on my desk, speaking directly to those who would hear my story. If you're listening to this, perhaps you're standing where I once stood, at the shocking discovery of betrayal, at the crossroads of fight or flight, at the terrifying precipice of an unknown future. I want you to know something I didn't understand when I first saw Cole leading another woman into our cabin. This moment, however painful, is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a different one, potentially a better one than you can currently imagine. When I changed those locks and security codes, I wasn't just securing physical spaces. I was reclaiming my agency, declaring that I alone would determine who had access to my life. The greatest power we have isn't in controlling others, it's in refusing to be controlled. It's in recognizing manipulation for what it is. It's in walking away from people who demand your compliance while betraying your trust. There's a difference between being strong and being invulnerable. True strength isn't about never breaking, it's about how you rebuild afterward. It's about transforming pain into wisdom, setbacks into boundaries, betrayal into self-knowledge. Freedom doesn't come when the divorce is finalized or when justice is served in court. Real freedom comes when you no longer define yourself in relation to the person who hurt you. When their approval, their criticism, their very existence becomes irrelevant to how you see yourself. This isn't just my story. It's a universal journey from betrayal to self-reclamation that countless others have walked before us and will walk after us. The circumstances differ, but the fundamental truth remains. You are not defined by what was done to you, but by what you choose to do next. I chose to rebuild, to redefine success on my own terms, to transform broken trust into boundaries that protect rather than walls that isolate. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you've just discovered the betrayal or you're years into rebuilding, remember that reclaiming your power isn't a single decision, but 1,000 small choices made daily. Each time you trust your instincts, speak your truth, or establish a boundary, you're changing the locks on your life, determining who and what deserves access. The most important security system isn't the one that protects your home. It's the one that guards your sense of self. And that system is built through the courageous act of choosing yourself repeatedly, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. That's the key no one can take from you. That's the code no one can change. I switched off the recorder and turned back to the horizon, where the last light of day met the endless possibility of the ocean. A fitting metaphor for endings that are really beginnings, for the boundless future that opens. when you finally close the door on what no longer serves you. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.